Hello and welcome to Neo Psychology with me, Mr. Neo. Today we carry on learning about aggression, specifically Lesson 7, Evolutionary Explanations of Human Aggression. Let's get started on the starter. It's a great place to start, isn't it? That was so lame. Starter, create a mind map as to what the evolutionary approach suggests about human behavior. What influences our behavior according to the evolutionary explanation of human aggression? Natural selection, how does that influence aggression? Sexual selection, key researchers, how do they explain parental investment? And are there any limitations to this theory? Have a little go doing a mind map about the evolutionary explanations of human aggression. Let's have a look at some of our learning objectives for today. So, Ella, learning objective 1, show comprehension and apply knowledge of the evolutionary explanations of sexual jealousy. And learning objective 2, identify and analyze Shackleford et al.'s 2005 research into intimate partner violence, also known as IPV. So let's start with LO1. Show comprehension and apply knowledge of evolutionary explanations of sexual jealousy. Aggression is usually seen as a wholly destructive behavior. It's not usually seen as having any benefits. And of course, its consequences often are. But does it bring any benefits to those who use it? For evolutionary explanations, the answer has to be yes. David Buss and Joshua Duntley have identified several adaptive functions of aggression, including acquiring resources and increasing status. So, what they're saying is aggression has essentially provided some sort of function which helps us acquire resources, whether that be money or food, and increasing status. But two highly researched functions are defeating sexual rivals and retaining mates. So, two highly researched functions, so two pieces of functions that have found that can result from aggression is that it can defeat any sexual rivals you have for your partner and it can retain you keeping onto your mate. Evolutionary explanations of sexual jealousy. So, this is the explanation of why people, specifically men, get quite jealous of their partners from an evolutionary perspective. So, let's have a look at definition first of all. Complete the definition. Evolutionary explanation. Fill in the gaps as I am. Try and do it as we go along. Pause the video now, try and complete it yourself. Support words are on the right. An account of the changes in species over millions of years, characteristics that enhance survival and reproduction are naturally selected. Modern behaviors are believed to have evolved because they solved challenges faced by our distant ancestors and so became more widespread in the gene pool. So here's the evolutionary explanation. An account of the changes in species over millions of years, right? It's not a small thing. It's not like Pokemon that evolve at level 19. It happens over millions of years, right? There's a tiny little change in one, and then next time there's a tiny little change, and then change and changes over millions of years make big changes. These characteristics and changes help you survive and or reproduce, right? A behavior that helps you survive will be passed on because if you don't have that behavior, your gene, that whatever you have will die. You won't be able to pass on those genes because if it's something, if it's a characteristic that you're trying to pass on, but it makes you die more younger, then you're less likely to pass it on. If you have a gene that makes you survive, it will be passed on, as well as if it helps you reproduce. If whatever behavior you do helps you to reproduce and helps you to get someone pregnant and pass on your genes, that will be naturally selected. In today's lesson, we're looking at aggression. How is aggression naturally selected? How does aggression help us survive? Modern behaviors are believed to have evolved because they solved challenges faced by our distant ancestors and so became more widespread in our genes. If there's a behavior that can help you survive or help you pass on your genes, it's going to be passed on. Therefore, we should have it today. And in terms of aggression, is how we understand that. Sexual jealousy is a major motivator of aggressive behavior in males, which can be given an evolutionary explanation. We can understand aggression in humans from an evolutionary perspective. Last lesson, we were having a look at the ethological explanations, which is sort of similar to the evolutionary explanation, but is using animals. So the ethological means animal research, right? And it understood it in animals in terms of like natural selection, in terms of passing on your genes. This lesson is about the evolutionary explanations, but it's using human research. This is because, unlike women, men can never be totally sure about whether or not they have truly fathered a child. Right? The woman gives the birth. It's come out of the woman. We know that that's at least the woman's, but there's no 100% way of knowing, of course, without like modern technology, of knowing if that kid is truly yours. This paternity uncertainty is a result of the very real threat for male of cuckoldry, or having to raise offspring that is not his own, right? So raising offspring that isn't yours is called cuckoldry. An investment in offspring that do not share the male's genes is a waste of his resources, right? If I've got limited resources, I'm not going to waste mine taking care of the child that's not mine. I need to take care of my children. I need to take care of my genes. So my genes are being naturally selected. I can't provide food for or shelter or protection for somebody else's kids. That's a waste of my resources. I need to focus my intentions on my resources, on my children, on my genes that are being passed on. It contributes to survival of a rival's genes and leaves the father with fewer resources to invest in his own future offspring. So this is how we understand it from an evolutionary perspective. Of course, nowadays some people might be perfectly happy to take care of children that aren't theirs. Of course, because we're not animals now. Or one might argue in some cases. But from an evolutionary perspective, you wouldn't take care of somebody else's children because it wouldn't benefit you. So I got the gif up here of like the show. It's like Jerry Springer. None of you know what that is. It's so before your time. This is actually from a show called Maury, and they do like paternity test. It's like Jeremy Kyle for today, for back then. It's you are not the father, and the guy's like, yeah, I'm not the father. I don't have to take care of this kid. Horrible, really, because it's like some baby, some innocent kid, but you're not the father. There's so many of these videos. I actually watched a few of them. It is hilarious. Men in our evolutionary past could have avoided cuckoldry were more productively successful. So psychological mechanisms have evolved to increase anti-cuckoldry behavior in males, right? So those males that didn't take care of other people's children, that didn't waste their own resources on other people's children, were more likely to pass on their genes because they saved their resources, their food, their shelter, their protection for their own children. Therefore, their genes in their children are more likely to be passed on. For instance, sexual jealousy is more strongly experienced in males than in females. This drives the often aggressive strategies men employ to retain their partners and prevent them from straying, strategies that were adaptive in our evolutionary history. So these were useful things. To be sexually aggressive, and we're going to look at some examples in a second, was adaptive. It's useful. It helps us survive. If you stopped your partner looking at other men and potentially having children elsewhere, it was to the benefit of yourself because it means that they're going to take care of their own children. They're going to take care of your offspring essentially and pass on your genes, which is essentially the whole key of survival. So here are the male retention strategies. Here are some of the strategies that the males did, which could be deemed aggression to help pass on your genes, to help your genes or your children survive. Margot Wilson and Martin Daly identified several mate retention strategies which involved aggression and even physical violence. These included 1. direct guarding, and 2, negative inducements. Let's have a look at what these 2 mean. Direct guarding. Direct guarding involves male vigilance over a partner's behavior. For example, checking who they've been seeing, coming home early, keeping tabs on their whereabouts, installing tracking apps on their mobile, etc. That would be direct guarding. You're guarding them. You're checking their phone. Where have you been, right? It's guarding them, to seeing where you've been, to make sure they're not being with any other males. And the other one is negative inducements, such as issuing threats of dire consequences for infidelity. I'll kill myself if you leave me, or if you cheat on me, I'll kill you, right? These are negative inducements. These are ways that aggression has potentially kept the female from straying away, from not essentially taking care of their children. Such behaviors are clearly linked to violence, and they're not nice to see today, if I'm honest. For example, Margot Wilson et al. In 95 found that women who reported male retention strategies in their partners, so they agreed with statements like, he insists on knowing who you are with and where you are at all times, were twice as likely to have suffered physical violence at the hands of their partners. Of these women, 73% required medical attention, that's massive, and 53% said they feared for their lives. God, 20% of those women required medical attention but didn't fear for their lives. They're hardcore. Right, here's the task now. Suggest whether the following statements are true or false, right? There's no way of knowing, but we're going to learn some of these facts if you don't know them. Pause the video, have a little think. Is it true? Is it false? And we're going to go through them now. Number 1, sexual jealousy accounted for 17% of all cases of murder in the UK. True or false? That is in fact true. Number 2, God, it's the most downy. It's such a downer quiz ever. Here we go. Number 2, on average, a woman is assaulted 35 times before her first call to the police. Is that true or false? That is in fact true. Women or men, if you're assaulted, call the police. Don't wait 35 times, just do it. They don't love you. Number 3, 2 women are killed every week in England and Wales by a current or former partner. I think that's true. That is true. In a case where a woman has died, the number one, I'm trying to think of my police shows that I watch. Is the number one target? Is the prime suspect? That's what I'm thinking of. When a woman has died, the husband or the partner or the boyfriend or the ex-boyfriend is always the prime suspect. Number 4, domestic violence has a higher rate of repeat victimization than any other crime. That is true, right? They don't change, right? Just get rid of them. They do not change. Domestic violence is the most repeated victimization than any other crime. They will do it again and again. Drop them like a bad habit. Oh, here we go. Number 5, 30% of domestic violence either starts or will intensify during pregnancy. That sounds awful. And that is true. There was a pattern going on. They're all true, right? 30% of domestic violence either starts or will intensify during pregnancy. That's awful. It's counterintuitive as well, in terms for an evolutionary explanation. What can you conclude from these statements? Think about it. What can you conclude from these horrific statements in terms of evolutionary explanations of aggression? Of course, we can conclude that men are horrible. And there's that side. Identify one thing you learned about evolutionary explanation of sexual aggression. What's one thing you learned? I'm sure you learned loads. What's one thing? Why do you think learning about evolutionary explanation of sexual jealousy is important? Why is it important to learn about these things? How does evolutionary explanation of sexual jealousy apply in real life? Well, there's lots of domestic violence. There's lots of cases where men are jealous and men get violent with their women, as we saw from the statistics. And what questions has evolutionary explanations of sexual jealousy raised for you? What are you still wondering about? Let me know. Put it in an email, ask me in person if you come to my lessons. Let me know. So there we go. Learning objective 1, show comprehension and apply knowledge of evolutionary explanations of sexual jealousy. Done. Learning objective 2, identify and analyze Shackleford et al.'s 2005 research into intimate partner violence. Okay, we learned about this evolutionary explanation of sexual jealousy. Okay, I take it, but give me some evidence. I want some research to show to back this up. I'm not just going to take your word for it. I wouldn't expect you to. Here's some research by Shackleford. Intimate partner violence. Todd Shackleford et al., my mate Todd, he studied intimate partner violence in heterosexual couples. Here was the procedure of his research. Men and women in 107 married couples completed different questionnaires. All of the participants had been married less than 1 year. The men completed the mate retention inventory, which assessed mate retention behaviors in various categories, such as direct guarding, like we looked at. The women completed the spouse influence report, which measured the extent of their partner's violence in their relationship. Here are the findings. There was a strong positive correlation between men's reports of their mate retention behaviors and women's reports of their partner's physical violence. So men who used guarding, like coming home early, checking up on them, or negative inducements such as threats to kill them, were more likely to use physical violence, surprise, surprise, against their partners. According to the researchers, these retention behaviors reliably predicted husbands' use of violence against their wives. So here's an application question. Getting out. Get out. Don't know why I did this. Shula has finally accepted that she is in an abusive relationship. Go on, Shula. For years, she has had to put up with her partner keeping a close eye on her every move. It's an abuse. Every time she went out, he wanted to know where she'd been and who she'd seen. She suspected he was checking her phone for messages and calls. Put a passcode on it. Sometimes he had to go away for work, and he was even worse when he got back. Recently, his behavior has taken a turn for the worst, and on a couple of occasions, he has hit her. Shula is now making plans to leave as soon as possible. Go on, Shula. Question. How does evolutionary theory explain the behavior of Shula's partners? Now, bear in mind, this evolutionary explanation isn't justifying that men should do this or why they do this. It's merely explaining why they do this or explaining aggression in these terms. Here's the answer. How does evolutionary theory explain the behavior of Shula's partner? Shula's partner is using mate retention strategies, right? It's a strategy to retain your mate. So self-explanatory, really. He does this to prevent her being unfaithful and producing offspring with another man because this would expose him to the risk of cuckoldry. That would involve him using his resources to raise another man's offspring, sacrificing his own genetic fitness for the benefit of another man. As a result of these sexual evolutionary mechanisms, Shula's partner is strongly sexually jealous. I'm not really jealous myself, but some men can be, and you'd understand it through the evolutionary perspective. His mate retention strategies include direct guarding. That is monitoring her behavior by checking her phone for messages, for example. Research shows that this behavior is closely linked with aggression, of course, as borne out of the fact that Shula's partner has now resorted to using physical violence against her. So that was intimate partner violence by Shackleford et al. In 2005. Identify one thing you learned about intimate partner violence by the research. Why do you think learning about Shackleford's research is important? How does Shackleford et al.'s research apply in real life? And then what questions has Shackleford et al.'s research into intimate partner violence raised for you? What are you still wondering about? So learning objective 2, identify and analyze Shackleford et al.'s 2005 research into intimate partner violence, IPV, is ticked off. Well done. Here's the plenary now. What have we got? Oh yeah. Video. I know you like your video clips. A lot of you are visual learners, so videos are all really helpful to check this out. Make sure you have the video link up. So have the PowerPoint that I send you next to this video link if you are watching, or you must be watching if you're hearing this. Check out the video, right? Watch the 5-minute clip from a BBC series, Human Instincts on Male Sexual Jealousy. And it shows you one individual who is very aggressive, really angry man, really jealous, and he does everything he can to prevent his male from being infertile, from being, not infertile, from being unfaithful, is what I was thinking. And there we go. There is the lesson for today. Thank you for joining the lesson today. I hope you enjoyed it. Today was lesson 7, Evolutionary Explanations of Human Aggression. Be sure to write up your notes and email them to me before the end of the week. Well done, my neuropsychologist. Keep up the brilliant work. I've been Mr. Neo. God bless and peace.